In the frozen heart of winter, 1259, the fields of Poland held a scene that looked torn from a nightmare. Peasants, trudging through snowdrifts in search of firewood, stumbled upon something so surreal it felt divine or cursed. Mongol horsemen, still mounted, frozen stiff in death. Both man and beast stood locked upright, encased in ice, eyes pecked clean by ravens. But the locals didn't mourn them. They didn't bury them either. They set up market stalls around the corpses. Children threw snowballs at the dead warriors. Dogs lifted their legs against them. One enterprising baker hung a wooden sign from a frozen Mongol's arm. It read, "Fresh bread, not made from human flesh like Mongol food." This wasn't fear anymore. This was contempt. For 2 decades, Europe had whispered Mongol horror stories of burning cities and mountains of severed heads. They remembered Lenica, where Mongols filled 9 sacks with human ears. They remembered goblets made from children's skulls, and entire kingdoms erased in days. But now, in 1259, when the Golden Horde returned to Poland expecting another easy conquest, they met something they'd never encountered before, an enemy that had learned from its nightmares. The Mongols were about to discover what happens when peaceful farmers learn how to kill like monsters. They had raised their own executioners. The Mongol war machine had always depended on one thing: horses. Each warrior traveled with up to 10 mounts, rotating them to keep their speed relentless. They drank their horses' blood to survive, used their hides for armor, their bones for weapons. A Mongol without a horse wasn't a warrior, just a man in fur, stranded in a land that hated him. The Poles understood this. Under Duke Boleslaw the Chaste, a name that would soon drip with irony, they had studied their invaders for 20 long years. And now they were ready to turn the Mongols' own strengths into fatal weaknesses. 3 months before the invasion, Poland became a silent battlefield. Every well was poisoned with rotting carcasses. Every field torched. Every inch of grass burned black. The land itself was turned into a weapon. Even the dead were dug up, their bones carried away, denying the enemy any scrap of nourishment or superstition. And the final cruelty: gift horses. Healthy-looking mares, left grazing and abandoned, all infected with glanders, a horrifying disease that drowns horses from the inside out. When Mongol scouts found them, they took them gladly. The infection spread faster than fire. When Mongol General Nogai Khan crossed the Vistula River that December with 30,000 riders, his scouts sent back strange reports. The land ahead was Itam. Not conquered, not fled, dead. Every village was ash, every field a grave. Wells bubbled with the corpses of horses and cattle. Even the birds had left. By the 2nd week, the Mongols' own horses began to cough blood. Necks swelled. Abscesses burst. And still, they pressed forward, dragging disease and death with them. They didn't understand infection. They simply moved the sick animals to the rear, unknowingly spreading the sickness through their entire herd. By the 3rd week, hundreds of horses were dying every day, collapsing in the snow, choking on their own blood. Wolves followed the army like shadows, feeding on what they left behind. That was when the Poles began to strike. Not armies, hunters. Duke Boleslaw hadn't called up noble knights in shining armor. He called the peasants, men who knew every tree, every shadow, every whisper of the forest. Men whose wives and children had been burned alive 20 years earlier. They were told one thing: kill Mongols the way you'd kill wolves. No honor, no chivalry, no mercy. They learned fast. At night, while Mongol scouting parties slept, Polish raiders crept through the snow in silence. They didn't attack. They simply cut the throats of every horse in camp, then melted back into the trees. A Mongol warrior would wake to find 5 dead horses lying in crimson snow. No sound, no sign of an enemy, only the cold wind carrying the smell of blood. Without their mounts, they were already dead men. They just didn't know it yet. One Mongol unit of 500 men awoke to find every single horse slaughtered. The carcasses had been arranged in a circle around their camp. A silent message written in blood and frost. We can reach you whenever we want. Fear spread like plague through the Mongol ranks. Warriors who had conquered kingdoms now jumped at the sound of wind through branches. They couldn't fight what they couldn't see. Then came the poisoned food. The Poles began leaving false supply caches, barrels of mead, sacks of grain, salted meat, all laced with hemlock and wolfsbane. Not enough to kill instantly, but enough to twist stomachs into knots and fill the snow with vomit and blood. One Mongol captain, Bedar, wrote to his commander, "The enemy is nowhere and everywhere. We conquer empty villages and rule over ghosts. My men bleed and see demons. Our horses eat each other's manes from hunger. This land is cursed." By January 1260, the curse had taken full hold. Horses gnawed on bark and dung. Warriors, starving, tried to eat the rotting flesh of their fallen mounts. Men who once drank mare's milk and horse blood now walked on foot, stumbling through a frozen wasteland designed to kill them. Poland had become a graveyard that moved. Every step the Mongols took sank deeper into death. And then, the trap at Sandomierz was sprung. 4 weeks, Duke Boleslaw had lured the Mongols deeper into his dead country, always retreating just beyond their reach, leaving behind poisoned supplies and burned villages. By the time the Mongols reached the Vistula, their 30,000 had withered to 15. They thought they had the Duke cornered. They didn't realize they'd walked straight into his masterpiece, a killing field crafted for horsemen. The Mongols approached Sandomierz expecting a final victory, one last glorious feast of conquest before returning east. What they found instead was a performance staged for their destruction. From the hill above the Vistula, the Polish army waited in perfect formation. Knights gleamed in the snow, banners snapping in the wind, infantry lines behind them braced and silent. It looked exactly like every doomed European army the Mongols had annihilated for 2 decades. General Nogai Khan saw what he expected: knights eager to charge, shields raised, overconfident and blind. He gave his usual command: feigned retreat, then arrows. It had worked against armies from China to Hungary. But this time, something strange happened. The knights didn't move. They just stood there, immovable, silent, waiting. When the Mongols wheeled around for their arrow assault, they learned the truth too late. The snow in front of the Polish line wasn't solid ground. It was a graveyard disguised as a meadow. Under a thin dusting of white lay deep trenches and pits lined with sharpened stakes, coated with human filth to guarantee infection. The first ranks of horses crashed through, screaming, their legs snapping like dry twigs. Riders tumbled into the pits, impaled before they even realized it was a trap. The killing field had been engineered with mathematical precision, every trap set where Mongol formations would wheel and turn. The invincible cavalry, the unstoppable storm of the steppe, suddenly found themselves crawling, sinking, dying. From behind snow-covered embankments, Polish crossbowmen rose and began their work. But they didn't aim for the men. They shot the horses. Every single one. It was not chaos. It was systematic execution. Bolt after bolt slammed into terrified animals, dropping them in the snow. The air filled with the screams of beasts, the desperate shouts of riders trying to remount, the hollow thud of hooves breaking bone. The Mongols realized the horror too late. Without their horses, they weren't warriors. They were corpses waiting to fall. And then came the peasants. They emerged from the forests and ditches by the thousands, not soldiers, but farmers. Men in patched coats wielding grain flails, hay hooks, iron hammers. They advanced through the snow singing work songs, the same ones they'd used for harvest. But today the harvest was of flesh. Duke Boleslaw had promised them pay. 1 silver penny for a Mongol ear, 2 pennies for a thumb, and a gold ducat for the head of a commander. The Mongols tried to regroup, forming defensive circles on foot, but exhaustion and disease had broken them. Their armor, made for mounted combat, dragged them down in the snow. Their arrows ran out. Their hands shook from cold and hunger. The peasants came in waves. They swung flails into helmets, hooks into throats, hammers into skulls. They didn't fight, they harvested. One Polish chronicler wrote, "The Tartars died not like warriors, but like sheep in slaughter season. Our peasants worked in teams, threshing lives as if they were grain." The ground turned to red mud. Some peasants, eager for more silver, cut both ears from the dead, even though payment was for one. Others collected fingers to string into necklaces, selling them later as protection charms. The air stank of iron and blood, of victory and vengeance. The massacre lasted only a few hours. When it ended, the fields of Sandomirs were carpeted with Mongol bodies, an ocean of broken armor and butchered flesh. The ear harvest, they called it. General Nogai Khan was captured alive. Duke Boleslaw had something special in mind for him, a punishment as symbolic as it was cruel. The once mighty Mongol commander was stripped naked, painted with pig's blood, and forced to ride a donkey backward through 20 Polish villages. The peasants jeered, pelted him with dung and rotten vegetables. In each village, one person was allowed to cut off a small piece, a finger joint, an ear, a toe, but never enough to kill him. By the time he reached the last village, he was a living ruin, begging for death. Instead, they castrated him with sheep shears and sent him back east. The message was clear. This is what Europe does to invaders now. While Poland celebrated, another army was rising to the south. In Austria, King Ottokar II of Bohemia prepared his own reckoning. The Mongols had ravaged his lands before, now he intended to end them. The Battle of Kressenbrunn, July 1260, would become the other half of Europe's revenge. Unlike Sandomirs, it wasn't fought in ambush or snow, but in open fields under a summer sun. This time, Europe had learned the Mongol playbook by heart. Ottokar's knights didn't charge headlong. They formed hollow squares bristling with pikes, moving fortresses of men and steel. Swiss mercenaries with crossbows filled the interiors, firing volleys into any horse that came near. The Mongol arrows that once shredded mail armor now bounced off new European plate steel. When the Mongol cavalry smashed into the pike walls, their ponies were skewered instantly, riders crushed beneath them. For the first time, the Mongols' tactics, perfected across continents, simply failed. Their thunder was gone. Their storm had no wind. When their formations broke, Ottokar's heavy cavalry, the new breed of European knight, charged. Massive warhorses trampled Mongol ponies, while hammers built to crush through lamellar armor came down like falling anvils. The killing was so absolute that Ottokar finally ordered his men to stop taking ears. There were simply too many. Instead, they stacked heads. Along the trade route from Vienna to Prague, 50 pyramids of skulls marked the victory, each built from hundreds of Mongol dead. The path became known as the Road of Silence, because even birds refused to fly over it. But the story didn't end there. The remnants of the once invincible Golden Horde, a few thousand survivors, fled west into the Carpathian Mountains, seeking escape through the snow-choked passes. There they met their final punishment. Winter in the Carpathians is not a season, it's a sentence. The surviving Mongols had no horses, no food, and no shelter. Their armor froze to their skin. The temperature fell below -30. The mountain villages, Polish and Hungarian alike, had been warned. They felled trees to block passes, destroyed bridges, and waited. Starvation in the mountains follows a grim ritual. First leather, then horseflesh, then bark and roots, and finally each other. When a Hungarian patrol stumbled upon a Mongol camp weeks later, they found the unthinkable. Corpses butchered with precision, flesh carved clean, bones cracked open for marrow, skin boiled into crackling. A warrior's journal recovered from the site read, "We ate Timur yesterday. He was my brother in arms for 6 years. His liver was black, but we ate it anyway. Tomorrow they will share me." The Mongols, who had once fed on Europe's fear, were now feeding on themselves. Villagers watched from a distance as the last of them froze where they sat, faces twisted in agony. When the thaw came, their bodies were stripped of weapons, jewelry, even teeth, anything that could be traded. Some mountain villages built a grim economy around the dead. They sold Mongol tendons for bowstrings, hair for brushes, skulls for drinking cups. Every Polish household, it was said, had at least one Tartar skull bowl for feast days. It was vengeance turned into tradition. The few Mongols who escaped the mountains wished they hadn't. They were captured, starved, and sold, traded like cattle in a new market of human revenge. The Venetians, ever practical about profit, began buying Mongol captives from Hungarian peasants for a handful of coins. They sold them to the Egyptian Mamluks, who took perverse satisfaction in enslaving the sons of men who once enslaved the world. The slave ships that carried them were floating hells, dark holds packed with broken men chained together, fed just enough to keep them breathing. Many went mad before they reached port. Mongol boys under 10 were castrated and sold as eunuchs, anuk, to guard royal harems. Only 1 in 3 survived the crude operation. Mongol girls were sold to brothels across the Mediterranean, advertised as the daughters of conquerors. Clients paid extra for the irony. One Venetian merchant recorded, "The Tartars make poor slaves. They bite their overseers like dogs and hang themselves with their chains." Back in Poland, Duke Boleslaw built his final monument, a church at Sandomierz, the Church of Divine Vengeance. Its mortar was mixed with ground Mongol bones. Its walls were decorated with skulls arranged into crosses. And on the altar stood a block of stone, the very spot where Nogai Khan had been mutilated. For 2 centuries, the church stood as a shrine to revenge, until later priests destroyed it, ashamed of its unholy origins. But by then, the message had already burned itself into Europe's memory. The Mongol nightmare was over. The Mongol invasion force that had thundered into Poland 30,000 strong was gone. When the winter smoke cleared, perhaps 500 broken survivors stumbled back to the Golden Horde. They carried home a horror story their people had never imagined. A story of poisoned earth, silent ghosts, and peasants who fought like demons. But Europe wasn't finished. Not yet. When word of the victories reached the royal courts of Europe, it spread like fire in dry grass. Suddenly, every baron, every knight, every would-be hero wanted Mongol trophies for their castle walls. The campaigns that followed were called the Mongol Hunts of 1261 to 1263, a continent-wide purge of every stray survivor who had ever terrorized Christendom. Bands of bounty hunters and mercenaries scoured the eastern plains. The Teutonic Knights, armored priests of war, led the hunts with grim enthusiasm. They captured Mongol scouts, tortured them for camp locations, then coated them in pitch and set them alight, sending them running, burning, back into their own encampments. Hungarian barons preferred more medieval theater. They lined their borders with impaled Mongol corpses, hundreds of them, their bodies twisting in the wind like grotesque banners. The message to any survivor was simple: Europe remembers. In 1262, the Golden Horde tried one last act of vengeance. 10,000 riders crossed into Poland again, hoping to punish, to reclaim fear. They made it only 30 miles. Church bells began to ring, one village after another. Within hours, every town in a 50-mile radius knew the Mongols were coming. Fires were lit, wells poisoned, roads blocked. Polish riders, peasants on shaggy farm horses, shadowed the invaders from the trees. These were no longer victims. They were wolves wearing human faces. They struck at night, killing sentries, stealing mounts, poisoning food, vanishing into the forest before dawn. Their hit-and-run warfare mirrored Mongol tactics perfectly, except the Poles knew the land. The Mongols found themselves fighting their own reflection, only colder, crueler, and unrelenting. Mongol commander Bundai sent a desperate report. "We are not fighting an army but the land itself. Every tree hides an archer. Every stream is poisoned. My men fear sleep, fear water, fear food. This is not war. This is being slowly eaten alive." After 2 weeks of this invisible siege, the survivors turned back. Their retreat was hounded by shadow armies, farmers, hunters, even children, throwing stones from the hills and singing mockery songs about the brave horsemen who ran from plows. The greatest empire of its age was retreating under a hail of laughter. By the spring of 1263, the Mongols were gone. And something terrifying had replaced them, not an empire, but a continent that had learned to fight without mercy. In less than a generation, the balance of the world had shifted. In 1241, Europe had trembled before the horsemen of the steppe. By 1263, those same horsemen were being sold in markets, their bones crushed into mortar, their skulls polished into feast cups. The invincible had become commodities. The conquerors had become currency. Across Poland and Hungary, peasant families kept grisly heirlooms, Mongol fingerbone necklaces hung above hearths for luck, modified harvest tools designed to cripple horses passed down from father to son. What had begun as survival had become tradition. Even the church, the institution that preached forgiveness, built monuments of vengeance. The Church of Divine Vengeance at Sandomierz, its walls lined with skulls, its altar standing upon the stone where Nogai Khan had been mutilated, stood for 2 centuries before embarrassed bishops tore it down. But they couldn't erase the memory of what it represented. Archaeologists today still uncover the bones. Mass graves along the Carpathian passes, skeletons with deep bite marks, proof of the cannibalism the Mongols were driven to. Fragments of armor, broken bows, arrowheads rusted into frozen soil. Every discovery whispers the same truth. The steppe horsemen had ridden into a land that refused to die quietly. In museum glass cases, you can still see the peasant weapons, flails, hooks, hammers, altered with crude iron teeth for tearing flesh. They're labeled harvest tools, to 13th century. But their weight tells a darker story. And beneath some of Poland's oldest churches, tests have found traces of calcium in the mortar, too much to come from limestone. Human calcium, the ground bones of Mongol warriors, mixed into sacred stone. Even in death, they became part of the land they tried to conquer. The Mongols had called their empire the eternal blue sky, believing their dominion was endless, that their god, Tengri, had given them the world. But on the edge of Europe, under gray clouds heavy with snow, the eternal sky finally met its horizon. It ended beneath the blade of a peasant's scythe. The Mongols had taught Europe how to be monsters, and Europe learned the lesson far too well. For centuries afterward, stories of that winter passed down through generations. Of frozen horsemen left standing like statues. Of wolves following armies across dead fields. Of peasants singing as they threshed human wheat. And somewhere in the east, one survivor still told the tale. A scout named Kutuz, who had lost his ears, nose, and fingers to Polish farmers, lived another 40 years. He warned every young Mongol warrior he met. They say we were invincible. We were not. We were just men far from home, who taught sheep to be wolves, and learned too late that one day, the sheep would eat us. The Mongols had created their own executioners, and Europe never forgot how to kill like them again.